Hello! So I've had a couple of friends ask me how I make homemade wine, and I'm going to show you how I do that. And to do that, we're going to need something to ferment. And this time of year, at least in the area that I live in, there is a couple of good options, but the most prevalent one that happens to be free is a rhubarb wine. So we're going to collect some stalks for this rhubarb wine, and I'll show you how we do that. So what we're looking for on this particular plant is we don't want these broad leaves. From the best of my understanding, these are actually poisonous. But you see these deep red stalks, that's what we're after. So we're going to see how much we can harvest from this particular plant and yeah, make some wine out of it. Okay, the next step is to cut the foliage off. So, see if I can do this with one hand. Okay, that can go to be recycled in compost, and then your rhubarb will just go ahead and gather it up. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is to rinse and clean the fruit, preferably on a sanitized and clean surface. And we're going to need about 3 pounds of fruit per gallon. Now, if they're, like in this case here, you can see that if there's bruising or perhaps maybe the slugs have been getting to it, that's okay. That's okay. We can work around that. The most important part is just to get the dirt off, the dandelions in this case, any bugs that may be present. Do it like you would any other vegetable that you would have bought from the store. To give you an idea, this small straining bowl is just over 3 pounds. I just weighed it 3 pounds 2 ounces. So we definitely have enough rhubarb, which is good because my mother-in-law wanted some as well. But anyway, we're going to need, I think we're doing a 6-gallon batch, so 3, 6, 9, 12, so between 14 and 16 pounds of rhubarb that we're going to need for this. Now I said 3 pounds per gallon. It doesn't have to be exactly 3 pounds. You can go a little lighter, you can go a little heavier, whatever you prefer. So what am I looking for here? Straining bags. So these guys are, it's just a mesh bag is what it is. You can get these at the grocery store. It's very inexpensive. But what we're going to do with those is we're going to put the rhubarb in these bags. And the same thing goes, well, pretty well with any other fruit that you want to do. At least the method that I'm choosing to do. You put it in the bag, and then when it comes to straining, racking is what it's called, but it's like straining the liquid off of the lees that's on the bottom. It's a lot easier to strain the liquid when there's no chunkies in it. So that's why we're going to use the bags here. We're going to put all the fruit in the bag. Okay, and then you're going to need some sort of vessel to do fermentation in. You can use plastic, glass. Honestly, it doesn't matter. You can use whatever you like. What does matter is that it's clean and sanitized, and most importantly that it has some sort of airlock or no air can get into it. And when you're first starting the fermentation process, a little bit of oxygen is good because you want the yeast to thrive in that oxygen environment. But later on, oxygen won't become your friend anymore. Oxygen can make your wine go sour, can make it turn into vinegar, and it can also promote the growth of bacteria. So either one of those are no good. So you have a couple of options here. You can use a carboy like this. The carboy is just a fancy name for big bottle. Or what some people use is they use a food grade bucket like this one. Either way, doesn't matter. What does matter as long as it's sanitized, airlocked, and clean. In my case, I'm going to be using a big ass bottle. So I've changed my mind. We're not doing 6 gallons anymore. We're going to go a little bit bigger, but the principle is still the same. So the amount of fruit that I showed you, that would be good for about 6 gallons. We're going to double that, more or less, and go from there. But anyway, once you got your fruit inside your vessel, whatever it may be, it's important to sanitize and kill off any natural yeast or bacteria that may be in your fruit. And you basically have one of two options to do that. The first one is to run it over boiling water or in boiling water. And the second one is to use a little tablet. You can buy those at a winemaking store. They're fairly inexpensive. They take a bit of time, but they do work. I'm going to use the boiling water method because that's what I have. So stay tuned. It's also important to note that if you're going to be using the boiling method, which is fine, it may affect the flavor of your wine later on in the future. I personally haven't had too many negative experiences with it, which is why I'm still using it, obviously. But it could affect the flavor, make it taste more like a cooked fruit, for example. So something to keep into consideration. It's not going to kill you. In my experiences, I haven't had anything too crazy, so that's what I'm using. And for a yeast nutrient substitute, what I'm going to do is take baking yeast, put it into a pot of water, a little bit of water, and boil the crap out of it. Kill them all. And the dead yeast will be the nutrient for the new yeast. Sort of a crude recycling. I'll do I don't know, 2 or 3 of these or whatever. Good enough. Okay, let that boil for about 3 minutes, or if you have a thermometer, until it's reached over 60 degrees Celsius. Then you know it's been pasteurized and everything that's in there is 100% dead. Okay, the next thing we're going to add is a couple sachets of black tea. This is going to help us give us some tannin in the wine. Go ahead and just plop those in. I probably will add an extra one. We'll do 3 tea bags, and that boiled bread yeast as the yeast nutrient. We added that as well. Okay, subject to change, but for this 14-gallon batch, we're going to need probably around. It could change because I'll have to take a few measurements, but I'm going to say at least 20 pounds of sugar, probably more. But we'll measure it and we'll add more if we need more, but I'm going to say, yeah, probably at least 20 pounds. Alrighty, that is a very heavy jug. So to add the sugar, you basically got one of 2 ways. A common way of doing it, or 2 common ways of doing it, I should say. The first one is to take like a large pot and a crap load of sugar, bring it to a boil, dissolve the sugar into the water, and then pour that water into your vessel. And then the second way is just shake and go. Dunk her in there and stir the crap out of it. And yeah, I've done it both ways. The pot method is by far the quickest, I think. Same thing goes if you want to use honey, syrup, or really whatever sugar you want to use. That's all pretty well the same thing. Okay, so this is what we're going to be using today. I've got 10 kilograms here, so that's about 20 pounds, and another 10 kilograms, or sorry, I guess 5 kilograms, so 10 pounds. So there's about 30 pounds of sugar-ish there. And I've got a bunch of hot water in here already, boiling water. So what I'm going to do is just stir and go, I guess, and see where that takes us. Okay, so once you've gone ahead and dissolved all your sugar, go ahead and fill this full of water. Leave a bit of headspace between the top of the bung and the fruit. And the reason being is when this starts going, it's going to want to push up and out. And sometimes it gets quite messy. So leave a bit of headspace there. And although not necessary, but highly recommended, is a tool called a hydrometer. And this tool measures the sugar content inside your wine. And with a rough calculation, you can calculate your alcohol by volume in this wine. Although not necessary, but highly recommended. These things are very inexpensive. I want to say they're like, I don't know, $5 or $4 or something, so very cheap. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Throw your yeast in. I put 3 sachets in there only because this is a 14-gallon batch. If you're just doing like a 6 or even a 3, just 1. It's more than enough. And yeah, throw them in there. You don't have to start it with a wine anyway, like you would say if you were baking. But if you're going to make a mead, it may be worthwhile to start your yeast in a separate container and throw it in once you see signs of life. Honey is a really hard one to get going. So, but this is all regular sugar, so this should, in theory, go pretty good. And that's more or less it. Wait 20 minutes, half an hour, whatever, and if you start to see this thing come up or bubbles, then you're good to go, and you wait basically 5 weeks. Okay, so it's been about, give or take, an hour, and I haven't noticed any bubbles yet coming from the carboy airlock. So that would be this thing right here. However, I am noticing, sorry, get that on camera here. I am noticing bubbles forming here and foaming going on top. So that tells me that there is signs of life. So I'm not too really, I'm really not that worried about it. So I'll give it another, I don't know, hour or two and see how she goes. I don't really have any concerns about it, but always good to keep an eye on it in case it doesn't go. Typically, if you're using sugar, like what I'm doing now, you shouldn't really have much of an issue. If you're using, say, like a honey, for example, you may have issues getting the fermentation going. Honey is a natural antibiotic, so yeast may or may not want to kickstart in the honey if you're choosing to make a mead, for example. But in our case, we're using just regular cane sugar and fructose that's already inside the rhubarb, so really there shouldn't be much of an issue. But yeah, we'll give it, I don't know, an hour or two and see what happens. What you got there, Oliver? What is that? Is that a frog in the house? Here, can I see? Oh, near. Yeah, that's a frog, all right. Here. Want to put him back outside or go show Mom? Go show Mom. Yeah, go show Mom. So, it's been overnight that we've had this fermenting on the go. We're just going to check it out, see how she is doing. Let's have a little looky-loo here. So the temperature is important, actually. If it's too cold, it probably won't ferment at all. And if it's too hot, same thing. So I'm looking at the temperature right now. We're sitting at, what are we sitting at here? I guess roughly 21 degrees Celsius, or that's about 70. So for fermentation, that's pretty good. That's about where you want it. And we're looking at the carboy here. And she is definitely bubbling away and fermenting quite pleasantly, actually. You can see all the bubbles forming there and signs of life. You look at the airlock, it's pushed up to the top. The bubbles are coming out of it. So that's a good thing. That's what you want to see. Once a day we'll give this thing a good stir it up, and then we'll maybe take a measurement on day 5 or 6 ish. We'll see what the specific gravity reading is, so that tells us how much sugar content is inside that particular wine. My initial specific gravity reading was 1.080, which is important. It's not necessarily vital, but if you want to find out what your alcohol by volume is, it's a lot easier by far to do with that hydrometer tool. They're very inexpensive. So what you would do is you take your initial reading, in my case 1.080, right on the dot, and you would wait until all the sugar's consumed or whenever you want to stop, and you would take your initial gravity reading minus the second gravity reading, and I believe it's 131 you have to multiply it by. Or hang on here, 131.25. Sorry, I had to look at my chart. And that would give you your alcohol by volume. It'll be off, we're talking like 0.01, 0.02 of a percent, depending on temperature. For what we're doing, who cares? Anyway, 1.080 will give us a content of approximately 12.5-ish%, which is kind of what we're going for. That's basically it. It's very, very easy, very straightforward. It's like the perfect hobby. It just takes a long time. Okay, so remember how much headspace we had on that carboy? Oh, one thing I failed to mention, which is, I view it as important, is I actually label all of my brews as I do them. So what I'll do is I'll put the date, sometimes I'll put the recipe, but in this case I just put rhubarb on there. I'll write down the yeast strain, and I'll also take an initial specific gravity reading. This isn't totally important, but it is important in the sense if you want to know what your final alcohol content is going to be. I don't know if you remember this, but this headspace was down here prior to this. And this has been going since yesterday. So it's been less than 24 hours. And you can see it's going pretty hard here. And starting to push the top out. You can see a little bit of foam coming out the top of the airlock there. Which is what I suspected would happen, actually. So a little bit of headspace during primary fermentation is a good thing. But yeah, she's definitely going strong. Oh yeah. Current temperature is 20 degrees Celsius, which is pretty good. Yeah. There's not a whole lot you can really do other than stir it up and just wait it out. If it goes through the top of the airlock, which it is already, that's okay. What you can do is just clean it out. Put, say if you have like some old vodka or something, you can put vodka in there, or sterilized water will work fine as well. But anyway, That's why you need to give it some decent headspace. Otherwise that will happen. Sorry guys, I also forgot to mention what the tools are and what's involved in making this stuff. What you need to invest in, what you can do without, so on and so forth. And in general, it doesn't really cost you a whole lot in material and in tools. After all, people have been doing this for quite some time. I would say well before the Egyptians. Quite a while. But anyway, I'll go over some of the tools that we use to make these kinds of things. And they pretty much go all the way around for ciders, beers, meads, wines. The tools are pretty well the same. There's a few specialty tools for each, but in general, you can get away with using just these tools. So the first one would be some sort of sanitizer, and that is important, actually. It's kind of like baking, or maybe maybe buying something, say, from the grocery store. You want to eat something that was dirty and that had been sitting around for a while, that sort of thing. You want something that is clean, sanitized, and you know it's going to be safe for consumption. And making wine or ciders, meads, generally speaking, it's the same thing. You want to make sure it's clean. So sanitizing is good. I personally use bleach. You can use bleach if you'd like. There is a bit of a downside to using bleach, is you have to make sure that your equipment, utensils, etc. are very well rinsed off and clean. And duly noted too, if you're going to be using a plastic container, there is a chance, hey Steve, there is a chance that bleach smell, odor, flavor, whatever you want to call it, will actually will leach into your to the taste of your wine or mead, cider, whatever it is you're doing. What else? So sanitation there. You're going to need access to clean water. A lot of people use like filtered water, that kind of thing. I'm not going to lie, I use tap water. That's what I've always done. It works fine. I haven't died yet. Maybe that's not the right thing to do, but I use tap water. Okay, and then you're also going to need some sort of vessel to hold your mash or your wine in, or whatever you want to do. So I'll show you these guys here. These are called carboys. These are basically just giant bottles. And this is a 3-gallon one, 3-gallon as well, and a couple of little 1-gallon guys. Or if you want to go mega, you know, there's a 14-gallon there. That's a lot. And then of course you could also use, like I said earlier, like a food grade bucket with a tight fitting lid and an airlock as well. Another inexpensive tool, which I very highly recommend, is a tool called a hydrometer. Do I have one with me here? No. Okay, I'll have to see if I can find one. Sorry, should have got all my stuff ready here. These tools are exceedingly inexpensive. Oop, that's the light switch. Very exceedingly inexpensive. This is the hydrometer here, and I don't know if I can focus on that at all. Can you focus? Anyway, there's a scale system on here, and there's several actually. There's one's got your specific gravity. What is this one here? And a few other ones, and potential alcohol measurements, so on and so forth. I only use the specific gravity. There's plenty of videos out there how to read one of these things. Get one. They run you $5. They're super cheap. It's going to save you a hell of a lot of heartache when you have bottles exploding. Usually when you buy these, they come with a graduated cylinder. And I guess you could, in theory, just pop it right in to your, say if you're using a bucket, you could just stick it right in there. That's totally fine. But if you're using a container like a carboy, I often do, you can't really stick the hydrometer in the carboy without difficulty getting it out, so just use the graduated cylinder. The next thing you're going to be wanting to maybe invest in is a food grade safe funnel. I got this one from the grocery store. Same thing, just a couple of bucks. I'm almost certain you could probably get one even from the thrift store, actually. They're a dime a dozen. Very, very cheap. The next thing you're going to need is some sort of tool to stir stuff with. And this is just a very simple, long spoon. Honestly, you can use whatever you'd like. As long as you can sanitize it. That's it. Just something to stir it up with. You're going to need, well, what I would recommend, I should say, is a turkey baster. And that's to draw out a sample of that mead or wine or whatever it is you're choosing to make without having to, say, like dunk your jug or something silly like that. It's much easier. You just pop the top off. Oh my gosh, Steve. My cat's driving me crazy. You just pop the top off, draw out your sample with the turkey baster, and then take your measurement from there. I also use, there's some sanitizer in here right now, but I also use a juice pitcher for a couple of things. I use it, like I said, to put sanitizer in and clean my utensils and tools. And you can also use it for transporting things, carrying water over. It's just, in general, it's an invaluable tool. Okay, so that's that. Because without that specific gravity reading, that initial gravity reading, you can't really tell how much alcohol is going to be in your brew. And also, too, towards the end of fermentation, when you go to bottle it, you need to make sure that you're not going to be blowing corks or exploding bottles. And the best way to do that is just to take a gravity reading and make sure that there's no sugar left in your in your brew. But for this one here, we're going to be waiting quite a while. We'll probably wait, I would say, 5 to 8 days. It depends on how fast it ferments, and we'll take a gravity reading as we go. I may siphon that over or rack it over to a secondary fermenter and let it do its final thing there. All in all, it takes about between 4 to 5 weeks, depending on many factors, temperature, how much sugar you have, so on and so forth. But yeah, I would say close to 4 to 5 weeks before we will carry on to the next steps, which would be clarifying, filtering, that kind of thing. And then, of course, bottling and corking, and we'll go over that as well. There's more. I totally forgot. You're going to need some sort of way to degas your wine, your mead, whatever it is you're trying to make. Oh my God, Steve, you're driving me nuts, kiddo. Okay, and then one way you can do that is with one of those big spoons I showed you earlier. You can stir the crap out of it. It takes forever. I don't personally like doing that. What I've done here, it's crude, but it works. This is a fiberglass rod, and believe it or not, that is weed whacker wire. And I just drilled a couple of holes, and threaded through, and then melted the two ends together. And I attached this to a 3/8 cordless drill, and that, tell you man, that sucker works like a hot damn. Kids are driving. Kids are going nuts upstairs. I better go check them out, I think, after this. Yeah, that's basically it. Oh, bottles. Yes, of course. You're gonna need bottles. Whatever size, color, shape you like to do. Typically these darker green bottles are good. I like them. They keep the light away from your brew or your wine or meat or whatever it is you're making. So the darker bottles, they do work quite well. If you're not worried about that, clear bottles work fine as well. Bottles are kind of expensive if you bought them retail. I bought most of my bottles secondhand, actually. And then you're going to need some way to shove a cork in. So this is a bench mount corker machine. It's very simple to operate. You stick the bottle in the bottom where that spring is, put a cork on top, and squeeze away. You can buy different kinds of corkers. I call them corkers, corking machines, whatever you call them. And I will show you one here. This is a really old one that I have. I've had this thing for years, literally years. I've had this thing for probably 20-some years. This is a hand corker. Put the bottle on the bottom on this part here. And then these two arms grab the neck of the bottle, and then your cork goes in there. Just squeeze away. It takes a bit of force though, using one of those. The bench mount by far is the easiest to use. That's it. Sugar, fruit, water, yeast. Done. And a couple more tools of choice is you're going to need something to siphon off your brew from the lees. The lees is like a fancy word for dead yeast and fruit particles that have sank to the bottom. You're going to need some sort of tool to remove the liquid from the top and keep the stuff you don't want on the bottom. And when a good, an easier way to do that is with a siphoning tool. So this is a long hose, long thick, I think it's PVC, I'm not sure exactly. It's some sort of plastic tubing. And that you can use to make a siphon to take off the stuff you want and leave the stuff you don't want. And what else? There's a couple more things in here that I'll show you. One is called an airlock. You can actually make your own airlock if you chose to, but these things are so inexpensive that I don't know why you would. So these particular ones anyway come in 3 parts. This is the body of the lock. It has a little plastic cup. And then, I'll try to do this with one hand here. There's a plastic cap with just a friction fit lid that goes on top. And then typically, I can show you with these ones here. Like for example, this one here would just have your plastic cap, the body of course, and then the tight fitting lid. Inside here you can put alcohol. So for example, you can put like vodka works pretty good, or you can use sanitized water, which is what I do. Stick some water in there. The most important thing is to make sure it's clean and to make sure that the air can't get into whatever it is you're trying to ferment. And then another thing to note is this little rubber, what's called a bung. It's basically like a little rubber cap. Again, super inexpensive. I want to say they were less than $1. If you're spending more than 50 bucks doing this, you're definitely spending too much money, I think. Okay, so that's that. So that's basically it. You need something to remove liquid from, get the things out that you want, and leave the things in that you don't want. You need a container to hold everything. So in this case, a carboy or a bucket or whatever. You need a tight-fitting lid, in this case a bung, a rubber bung, an airlock of some sort, in my case a homebrew airlock. They're a dime a dozen. Yeah, I guess that's that. Okay, now we're going to talk about the kind of yeast that you can use to make your mead, ciders, wines, beers, whatever you like. I often get asked this question a lot, and that is, can you use bread yeast to make ciders, wines, beers, etc.? The short answer is yes, you can. It will work. The long answer is it's not going to work very well. I have done it before, and it's not my favorite thing. A sachet of wine yeast is something like 50 cents or 75 cents, whatever it is. It's very, very cheap. So I don't personally know why you wouldn't want to use one. However, if that's all you had was bread yeast, then yeah, 100% it can. Yeast is kind of analogous to, say, a dog breed. What do I mean by that? So if you have like a Labrador or a Bulldog, or maybe what do you call those things? Like a Terrier or a Dalmatian, for example. The Labrador will outswim the Bulldog, and the Terrier will catch the rat in a hole before the Dalmatian will. So they're really good at specific things, but in short, they're all dogs. There's no genetic diversity there at all. They're bred for specific things. And yeast is more or less kind of the same way. Bread yeast is not super great at making alcohol, or at least having a high alcohol tolerance. Whereas if you're using, say, like a champagne yeast or like a wine yeast of some sort, then your alcohol tolerance will be much higher. Your bread yeast will still make alcohol. There's no question about that. But I suspect, and I can test this, I think I will actually, but I suspect that a bread yeast won't get much more than, say, 10 or 11% by volume. I'm willing to put money that it wouldn't go much higher than that. A champagne yeast, between 14 and 18%, abouts, depending on the strain you use. That is pretty common for a specific bread wine yeast. So, in short, yes, it works. You're not going to get as much alcohol out of it. The time-wise, I would say they're both between 2 to 5 weeks. So that part doesn't really change. Some people say that it affects the flavor. I would agree with them. Yes, it definitely does. I'll leave that to your discretion, though. Whatever you like to use. Okay. Oops, pardon me. Okay. This is why headspace is important. Yeah, she's going berserk, man. Pardon me, I got the hiccups. Shit. Yeah. Well, I guess this is a fair point to say that make sure you put this in a place where you're not afraid to get a little messy. Because obviously that's a bit of an issue there. Yeah, so Not much we can really do about this other than clean it up, give it a quick stir, knock the fruit back down, and yeah, just wait it out, I guess. Good morning. Today is day 2 of our rhubarb wine. So I've come down today to have a look on things, and this is a first for me. This actually blew the top off. I've never had that happen before, so that's a new one. And so what I did anyway is I've cleaned it all up, sanitized everything again. I don't know what time it blew the top off, and hopefully that's not going to affect anything too much. I hope. And holy cow, man! Talk about a mess. Anyway, I'll give you. I'll show you here. I don't think I've ever had a primary fermentation go quite this berserk before. I've had it go crazy, but not like that. That's going nuts, man. Yeah, so I mean, what I could do is take some of this liquid out and allow for more headspace. Because Jesus, man, is that just going insane? I don't know. Stay tuned for that. So I'm running into a bit of a problem. The problem is that this bung is just a bit too small for the top of the carboy, for the neck of the bottle. And what's happening is it's being pushed out too easily. And the alternative would be to push it in deeper. When I do that, I run the risk of pushing it in the bottle, and I don't think I'd ever get it out if that's the case. So I do have a number 11 bung. This one, I believe, is a number 10, and the one that's on there is a 10.5. So I'm hoping that this half a size bigger will get what I'm trying to achieve here. The problem is, this is just a stopper. There's no hole in this, and I need to put a hole in it. So yeah, I don't know if you've ever tried drilling through rubber before, but this could be pretty dicey. We'll give it a shot. If it fails, well, whatever. I'm sure we can find some other alternative or make what we have work, but that's what I'm going to try to do. We'll mount it in this sucker here and try to put a hole in it. Now, I'm a little bit concerned with this, because what I suspect could happen is, because this is rubber, it's going to grab the drill bit and try to spin out of control or stall the machine. So I've decided to clamp the vise down directly to the bench, and hopefully I can keep my hands out of the way in case this thing does decide to spin up and take off on me. This drill press is slightly underpowered, so I actually kind of doubt that it have enough energy to actually grab and spin it out. But you know, you can never really be too safe with this stuff. Let's try it out and see what happens here. It appears to be working, so we'll carry on. Well, that was anticlimactic. Nothing happened. Drilled like a charm. I'm very surprised, actually. I thought for sure that sucker would have grabbed. But well, that's not the world's cleanest hole, but I'm hoping that'll work. One little concern, though, is I think that may be too small. If we compare it to this one, maybe. Hang on here. Yeah, it is definitely a little bit on the smaller side. That was a 3/8 hole, and you can also see too where it's been pressed down like this on the vise, so it's slightly ovaled. I don't know how to avoid that. The bottom seems pretty round, actually. We'll try it, see if it fits. If it gets a good airtight fit, I'm going to call that good. And if not, then we'll go a size larger, I guess, and maybe drill it from the bottom out this time and maybe flare this part and hopefully get that round. I don't know. I'm kind of ad-libbing as I go here, but we'll try it. So the good news is it fits like a charm. It's not popping off. I'm not really worried about anything like that. Cleaned it all off, degreased it, sanitized it, so on and so forth. However, have a look at this. Oh, buddy. It is going just crazy. Look at that. Wow. I don't actually think that I've ever had one. Well, I've had some blow the tops off like this before, but not one quite this crazy. That is just going berserk, which is beautiful. Look at that. Duly noted. I think I said this earlier, but make sure you put these or in a bucket or in a bucket or carboy, whatever you're using, whatever it is that you're using, pardon me. Put it in a place that if it does decide to, go out of control, that it's not going to damage your flooring or your countertops, anything like that. I did a batch, oh gosh, probably like 12 years ago now. It was quite a while. Anyway, I had it on the countertop, and it was a dark colored wine, and it did exactly just that. Spilled over the top. I didn't have any towel. I didn't have anything really underneath it to collect it or catch it. And it ended up staining the countertops. So it can be a pretty messy affair during primary fermentation. This one, for some reason, that rhubarb just seems to take right off. I'm not complaining though, so that's a good thing. So once a day, what we'll do is we'll come down here, we'll stir it, stir everything around, mix everything together again, try to oxygenate it as best we can. We'll do that for anywhere from 5 to 8 days. There's really no like perfect guideline for it. But generally speaking, what I do anyway is I'll keep that specific gravity reading, that 1.080. I want that to cut down at least by half, preferably a little bit less, before we rack it over to a secondary fermenter or another bottle, whatever. And after we rack it over, like siphon off the liquid from all the chunkies, after we've done that, we aren't going to stir it anymore. We're just going to let it sit and do its thing. I suspect that it will not blow the top off the fermenter. Highly doubt that. Usually by that point, things have settled down. It will continue to bubble, be a slow bubble. Like right now, it's bubbling like once a second. It's going berserk. But when we siphon it over, I suspect it'll be bubbling once every 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 20 seconds. It'll be noticeable. You'll see it on the, let's see if I can find one here. You'll see it on the, you'll see it on the airlock. Do I have an extra one in here? Oh yeah, I'll just show you one of these ones. So you'll see it on, well, this one's that's a bad example because she's done. But you'll see it on this one here. It's so slow. Oh, come on. Show it for the camera. See that? So it'll be something like that. You're not going to see any of these crazy foaming bubbles, having booze spill all over your floor. Yeah, bit of a messy one. But anyway, I'm not going to be here. I'm going to be taking off to go to work, but my wife's going to be coming down and she'll be checking on it, stirring it. It's really not that hard or that big of a chore to do. Yeah, hurry up and wait, I guess.